Okay, so good morning, everybody. My name is Graham Blank, and I'm the Vice President for Tomlin Music. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our third webinar in the last week, and my third webinar ever. So last last Wednesday, last Friday, sorry, we had our first webinar, which was an introduction to online music teaching, and we had four fabulous panelists from across Canada. And then on Wednesday, we had a more in-depth look into technology for music education with our digital division product manager, Jeremy Cook, and myself. And today we're delighted to have Dr. Ross Salvosa with us, and today is going to be quite a bit different than the last two. We're going to go deep into the technology and show you how to get set up with multiple cameras and microphones and so on. So what I'd like to do is just start off with our agenda. So I'll introduce Dr. Salvosa, and then we'll talk about what our objectives for the webinar are today. I will take you through quickly the advanced teacher and student setups, and then I'm going to hand it over to Ross, and Ross is going to take you through a live demonstration of his studio and how he has everything all set up. So. And apparently my gain is low. So one sec. I'm going to turn my microphone up. Is that better? Check, check, check.
Much better.
Much better?
Much better.
Okay. Now you can hear the piano in the background with my son?
Mm-hmm. Now
Yeah.
I can hear it.
Okay. Well, I'm as a parent, I'm never going to tell my son to not practice. So I think we can just live with it. I'll just mute my microphone when I'm not talking.
I love it.
Here we go. Okay. Perfect. Thanks. Okay, I see the chats. We're good to go here. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Ross Salvosa. Ross and I have known each other for the last 10 years in Vancouver. And as a teacher, Ross organized many events and festivals, and has been an adjudicator a number of times for competitions and things that we've done. And for the last 8 years has been a doctoral student at the University of British Columbia School of Music. So I'll turn it over to Ross to say a few words, and then we'll get into it.
Well, thank you, Graham, so much for inviting me to be a panelist for this, and I'm happy to share my knowledge with online teaching, which I've been doing since 2017. And so I think it's exciting. It's a new frontier for all of us music teachers, and for those who just got on board. This is a new frontier. It's a gold mine of opportunities for more creative teaching. So we're here to support you, and uh, I hope you will get a lot from this webinar.
Okay, I'll unmute my microphone. Now my son's onto a new song here, so if the bass comes out, I might have to stop him. But okay, here we go. So our objectives for this morning, first of all, is to help get you started teaching music online. So we're going to teach you the ins and outs, what you need to know to get going with a music teaching studio using Zoom video and various other software and hardware. So we'll talk about that, what you need to, hardware and software needs, how do you connect everything together, and there's lots of different ways to do it. So Ross and I actually this morning compared our setups, and we're doing some things the same, and we're doing some things differently. So we've kind of trial and error gotten us here. We'll talk about the best audio and video quality, and I think it's important to remember that you're teaching music, and the most important part about music is the audio. Video is important, but not as important as the audio. So we'll talk about that and demonstrate what we're using to make our audio sound better than out of the box. And then the last part is how you can help your students get set up. So what do they need on their end to have a great experience? And ultimately, our goal is to help you deliver the most engaging online teaching experience possible for your students. Okay, so a quick rundown of this. I should mention that the last two webinars that we did are available for download, the full webinar as well as the slides and some reference material. If you go to our website, tomleymusic.ca, and then / educators, plural. You will find a link to a Dropbox where you can download all of the previous webinars, and today's webinar will be uploaded by the end of the day as well. Okay, so the first thing you need for an online teaching setup, an advanced one for teachers, is a quiet room. And so you don't have background noise that's bleeding the microphone. And particularly because we're using Zoom video, and there's a feature in Zoom, if you're running it from a computer, that's called Use Original Sound, which is turning off all the cancellation, noise suppression, and things like that. So you really do need to have a quiet room. A good instrument, of course. And if you need help with that, you can always reach out to me. I can help you with that. Fast internet, people asked, how fast internet do you need? Generally 25 megabits per second upload. And if you are logged in, or if you're on the internet from any device, there's many different ways to test your internet speed, but one of them that I use is just called speed tests. So if you do a Google search for speed test, I think it's speedtest.net. And you'll click start and it'll tell you what your speed is. But generally, 25 megabits a second is what you need or higher. If you're able to watch, if you're watching TV, let's say you have like Telus Optic TV, or and you're watching Netflix, if you're able to watch those without lag, you probably have a fast enough connection. But it's more the upload speed, not the download speed. So you need a smartphone, tablet, notebook, or personal computer. And we highly recommend from our teacher side that you would be, your primary device would be either a notebook or a personal computer. And the reason is that it allows you to use what's called original audio in Zoom, which is uncompressed. So if you're using a smartphone or a tablet, you will be dealing with compressed audio. It's still pretty good audio. It's not as good as a tablet or as a personal computer or notebook. Obviously, you need a webcam. Many computers have webcams built into them. I'm using a Logitech webcam, an inexpensive webcam that's plugged into my. I'm running a MacBook, and you will need a Zoom Pro account. So as a student, the students only need to have a Zoom free account. So you can sign up at zoom.us. But for the teachers, it's $20 a month. And it's recommended to have a Zoom Pro account because it allows you to do a number of things like record and have multiple cameras. You can have a video conference with more than 3 people at a time, which you will need to do if you're going to run multiple cameras. In the free version allows you to have multiple cameras, but there's a 40-minute time window and then you get kicked out. So if you have the Pro account, it's unlimited, I think up to 100 attendees, which I've had meetings, I think up to about 25, and it works fine. Okay. A USB microphone, and I'll just talk about that. What I'm using, I can show you this, is an AKG condenser microphone. It's got a little stand. It sits on my desktop. As you can hear, as I turn it away, it's quite directional. And this one actually has multiple settings. So this is I'm using the front microphone now, so it's very directional, but it picks up room sound. So it's particularly good for instruments. I have a guitar beside me. I've tried playing the guitar over it, or acoustic piano, or even voice. Wind instruments, a condenser microphone is definitely ideal. You can also use a dynamic microphone, which is a microphone that is very directional, and it picks up, you have to be very close to it. So if you're just focusing on speaking, then that would be a good way to go as well. But and the other thing I should mention, most USB microphones have what's called direct sound. So this microphone that I'm using has a headphone out on the bottom of it. My headphones that I'm using are plugged into the bottom, and I can hear myself. If you take your headphones and plug it into your device, so your iPad or your notebook computer, you will only hear what's coming from the other side. So you'll hear your student, but you will not hear your own microphone. So It's particularly important if you're going to be singing or if you're playing an instrument that you need to be in pitch, you need to hear yourself. So that's so a USB microphone with a direct sound output or direct output, and you can also use speakers. The disadvantage of speakers is that you can get echo, so that your the sound coming out is also picked up by the microphone, and you get kind of a feedback loop or echo. So headphones are ideal. I'm using in-ear monitors, and I like them. The sound is great on them, but they also don't look like I'm wearing headphones. So unless I turn sideways. And what Ross is wearing over the ear headphones, but his headphones are open ear, which means that he can hear the student, but he can also hear himself through the outside. So they're not noise canceling headphones, and they're not blocking the sound. So they're more of an ambient sound. So either one will work, in ear headphones or open ear headphones, or if you choose speakers. And then what we're going to get in today is we're going to show you how to use additional cameras or smartphones or tablets. So you can pretty much use any device as an additional camera. So Ross has 4 additional cameras. Ross, is that right?
I have, yes, actually one, two, three, four, five, if I
5.
wanted to.
Okay. And I have in my setup here, I actually have 2 additional cameras. So we'll show how that works a little bit later on. But and then the last one of Ross's devices is a tablet computer, an Apple iPad, and that is where he's going to share his notation with the student and be able to notate it. So we'll show that later on. Okay, so that's the advanced teacher setup, and then the advanced student setup is basically the same. Um, there's less devices. They don't necessarily need a personal computer, though it is ideal. But if they only have one device, that's fine too. You just have to, you think about where you're going to position it. So as an example, my son had his first Zoom bass lesson and Zoom piano lesson in the last week. And for he used an Apple iPad, and that was all he had, no speakers, no headphones. For his piano lesson, he positioned the iPad on a chair, I think to the left of the piano, so on the bass side of the piano, so the teacher could see his face when he turned and also see his hands on the keyboard. And for his bass lesson, he used the same iPad, just put on a chair facing him, and moved it back so that the teacher could see his picking hand and his fretting hand. So a webcam. So again, most tablets, smartphones, computers have those built in, but you can have a separate webcam if you like. The student doesn't need to have a Zoom Pro account. A Zoom free account is fine, because as long as the teacher is initiating the Zoom meeting and they have a Pro account, the student can essentially join for free. So it won't cost the student anything to sign up. And again, we would recommend a USB microphone with direct sound output and headphones, so the student can really hear what the teacher is talking about, and also hear themselves. And then if the student likes, they can add an additional camera, smartphone, a tablet, and I'll let Ross talk about what most of his students are now set up with to get the best experience. So, okay, so that's it. We will be answering some questions at the end, and CJ, who is our chat moderator, CJ from Tomlin Music, thank you for moderating today. We'll be going through and answering questions as we go along, and at the end, she's going to push some of the questions through to us, and we'll answer them live. So, okay, there we go. I am going to turn it over to Ross, and this is a picture that I stole from Facebook of Ross's teaching studio. And over the last week, I reached out to teachers and asked if anybody is teaching online, and to send me pictures of the setup. And Ross has been very generous on Facebook he's done a tutorial and if you connect with Ross on Facebook, you can see exactly how it's set up. But he's going to go through that right now. So there's a picture of his setup, and Ross, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, teachers, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Graham. Um, so basically, how I set it up is I use my MacBook Pro. It's an old one. It's a 6-year-old. I think it's about 6-year-old MacBook Pro that I have actually not been using for quite some time, and it was sitting inside the closet. And everything that I'm using right now are things that I've already owned from the past. I had a video camera that I can connect to the USB, Q8 that I used for my master classes. I recorded them. I had an old Shure microphone that I use for practice sessions or rehearsals to hear myself and record all of that. And I have a 6-year-old iPad that I haven't used for years. Um, my husband has Yeti microphone that he uses for his voiceover audition. So the first thing I did when I went fully online was to create an inventory of what electronic gears I've already owned. And I think for all of us, that's probably the best first step to take in setting up your online studio. Check whatever you have, microphones, computer, even flat screen monitors that you can use that can be hooked up for USB, HDMI. All of those are useful. Microphones, earphones, tripods, whatnot. So that's what I did. And I made a list of them. And then I checked, okay, maybe this one I can use and this one I can use. And that, oh, maybe that's too old for this. This doesn't have a USB. So I sorted it out. And then I started figuring out how I can stitch them all up together. And thanks to Zoom, you know, you can actually use, if you have, I think maybe it's a pro setting too. If you have a Zoom Pro, you can use the same account to stitch all your equipments together. You can join them in all the same meeting room, and you can have different camera angles from different devices. For example, I have here the one I'm pointing at, an old iPhone 6 Plus that has a busted microphone. Thankfully, I didn't throw it away, and it's been sitting inside my studio closet for years. And I just use it as a secondary camera. So it's hooked, um, and I will show you. I'm going to screen share that. Graham, are we able to? Are they able to
I'm
see
just
that?
gonna,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just gonna cancel spot.
I think you're muted.
Sorry,
Okay.
there we go. You can
Yeah.
hear me now?
Yes. So I
Okay.
just enabled my piano keyboard view left. So I have this. It's an old iPhone that has a Zoom account, and I log into the same meeting room, and I get the view from the left. As well, my laptop, my MacBook, is also hooked to a video camera that I use, a Q8 that has a good microphone, and I use that as my piano keyboard view right. So my students can toggle between between screens. If they wanted to see my right hand, what my right hand is doing, they can go to the piano keyboard right, and then if they want to see my left hand, they can see through the piano keyboard left. And one of my students even commented because the ones that are just recently went fully online said, "Oh, this is just like when we have our lesson one-on-one." They don't With this they don't really feel much of a difference of it, and I think it's also an enhancement because then they can um, choose whatever view they want uh, as well as uh, be in the comfort of their own home. And I have another equipment here right in front of me, which is an iPad Pro. And this one I use for screen sharing. Zoom has a screen share capability, and also it has its own whiteboard where you can interact with your students. You can write things and they can write back using their fingers, or if they have a pen, they can use that as well. Uh, what's beautiful about that too is that I can annotate and show them what I'm writing under scores in real time. So what I do for that is I use two softwares, Fourscore, which I use as well for my performances, I import the PDFs or from IMSLP the pieces that they're playing, and I can write through there. I can, if I can share my screen, Graham.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen so the slideshow will go away, and then I'll give you control of that.
Perfect. I'll start broadcasting my screen. There you go. So I screen share this device, and I use Fourscore. Like I was just teaching a student the Chopin Etude number 3 the other day. Um, so you can write on it in real time, and your students will be able to see it. So what most of my students, I think all of them now, uh, start their lessons with two devices. One is for their camera, which is on the side, camera and audio, that we position to the side so I can see a side profile of their hands and their bodies and their faces. And we use that as like the one-on-one face-to-face interaction. And I had some of them have it propped up like I have right now with my iPad so they can see my face and they don't have to stoop down. A lot of the problem with devices too is we position it far too low, it hurts our neck. So I've had everything propped up, and I've instructed the parents of my students to have things propped up as well, so that they're not stooping down or looking down too much. And in this way, I'm always looking up, which is also good for their posture. And all of them have at least an iPhone or a tablet, iPad that they use, and they use another device so that they can put it on their um, music rack, and that screen is only dedicated for music annotation. And so they can see exactly what I'm writing in real time on their music rack. And most of them don't even use their books anymore. We just project, I just use my screen share and we use what I'm sharing on the screen as their sheet music. And we write on them, and we go measure by measure. They're very detailed instructions. That's Fourscore. That's one of the things I use. But another thing that I found very, very useful is a software called Microsoft Whiteboard. Microsoft Whiteboard enables you to draw, to import things. For example, let's see, I have, you'll see there that I have folders for most of my students, especially the younger ones that have less complicated or less advanced repertoire. Um, I don't use Fourscore, I use Whiteboard. So I import their music. So our protocol is this: the morning of their lesson or the night before, parent sends me a picture of the pieces they're working on by text, the easiest way I can receive it. And then I import it to my photos, and I just then import it to Microsoft Whiteboard using this button. It says image, and then through that you can import any image that's in your photo album. And then I import it. And sometimes when you import uh, pieces here, for example, I'll try this one, it will be too small, but all you have to do is click on it and drag it and then turn it around and it makes it bigger. So it's quite easy. And with the pen, it's easy to write on it. I use very colorful, rainbow colored writing. My students love that. And also you can keep a record of what they've been doing, uh, your notes, theory. If I, like this one, I was teaching theory. So I've also imported a picture of a keyboard. I have that always on my photo album. So if I need it, I just import that so I can teach theory, I can teach ear training through this screen share. So those I found very useful. One thing that when I first started going fully online, that felt very disempowering was the inability to actually notate things on your student score or write on them. And when I'm faced with that feeling of disempowerment, I always think to myself, okay, how I can turn this around and transmute this to make this more empowering. So I started figuring out workarounds. And this workaround is actually much better than what we do in person. With this, the kids are so far more engaged because they see colors, they're on their screens, and they're far more attentive because they have a screen in front of them. And also, it's quite interactive in a very modern sense. So kids nowadays find that more interesting than writing on a book. And I even tell my students, okay, you can either copy this to your book or just screenshot it. By screenshotting it, they have a record of it, and they can just review the screenshots later and copy it if they want to their sheet music. Uh, but so far, it has been very, very, very effective for me. What's also neat about this is I can play games with them online. That it will play sounds, it will play everything. For example, that's one game that I use, and another game, theory game that I highly recommend to everyone is Tenuto. It has quite an array of games, note identification, uh, like this one. If you press the right, it will play the pitch. There's ear training, keyboard ear training. This we love because we keep score, and we have a competition in my studio of who uh, gets all the right answers the most. And so they really practice hard their ear training. Note ear training, interval ear training, and it's customizable if you want it easy uh, from just 5 keys to 7 keys to 12 keys. It's customizable. So that I really like. How I set up my cameras. So I used to have just my iPad, and my iPad was my first command center. I didn't even, in the beginning, thought of using my MacBook for that. And with my iPad, I connected my Shure microphone. I'll show you. This is my Shure mic that I use for my performance practices. This is an iOS microphone that I connected to my MacBook. No, I'm sorry, to my iPad. And this enables me to control the sound, the gain, um, the aperture of the sound through this, and it connects with the lightning plug of the iPad, and the sound quality is amazing. So that was my first setup when I started teaching online, um, and just a camera from above and using my words. Then I figured with Zoom that I can use another camera angle, so I had that old iPhone. So that was my second setup. I combined those two in a meeting room. And then my students had at least one more view of the keyboard and my hands. And then I got more complex. I realized that if I use my MacBook Pro as my command center, then I can stitch more equipment together. So I then use now my MacBook Pro as my command center. I hooked up the external microphone through USB here. And what I love about Zoom is that you can toggle between microphones that you have, or you can toggle between video um, cameras that you have. So I hooked up my webcam, my Zoom Q8 webcam that has a good microphone through this computer. And the keyboard view on the right that you see, that's my Q8 webcam. And that has a good microphone as well. And if you go to the far left lower corner, there's a mute icon there. If you click the right side of that, you'll see the audio settings. And from there, you can pick and choose what microphones you have. And for me, I have as a selection my Yeti microphone and or the Q8 webcam audio, which is also very good. Now, there's an advantage for me to using my Q8 because I connected my I love my Yamaha Avant N1. It has an audio out line out that I connected directly to the line inputs of my camera. And so I've channeled the sound of my Q8 so that the line input serves as um, stereophonic sound, and the microphone built into it I use as a middle um, sound. Or I can also change it. I've changed it around the other day, and it actually quite sounds nice too. I have the sound of the line output of this connected to my audio as a center, and the ambient noise that's picked up by the internal microphone as a side left and right stereophonic sound. So that really helps me when I'm demonstrating, so that my students have um, a much more enjoyable audiophonic experience. So do we have questions, Graham, so far?
I've been typing some questions as we go along, or answering questions as we go along, as has CJ. So Ross, maybe one thing that would be good is, and I think we may be able to do this via screen share. I think it would be good to show some of the advanced settings in Zoom. So I could do that either from my side on my computer, or you could do that from your side on your computer.
Let's do it from yours.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. There, I'm unmuted. Okay. So I will need to go to. So what I'm doing is I'm going down to the bottom of my Zoom, which everybody has the same button. There's a green button and it says share screen. And when I click on this button, I can share my desktop, whiteboard. If I have another iPhone, iPad via AirPlay or via cable, and then it gives me the option to share any open apps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my desktop, and you're actually going to see a double picture of Ross. I just actually, somebody was asking for the link to Fourscore, so here it is, fourscore.co. Okay, so I am going to switch to Zoom, and okay, so you can access the Zoom settings a couple different ways, but if you can see where my microphone says mute, I believe you can see it.
Actually, we can't. I'll do it this way, because when you screen share, it doesn't show you your Zoom controls. I have a slideshow.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that has that. I took a screenshot of everything, so I will start the broadcast on mine.
Perfect.
Because I just did a webinar for for the art of piano pedagogy uh, panel. So there you go. So when you go to your, I'll start with the iOS apps, the device apps, and this is what normally you would see when you download your apps. And most people would click on New Meeting. Actually, that's not the first place to click on it. You want to click on the left corner on Meetings, the meeting settings right there on the left bottom corner, meeting settings. And when you go to the meeting settings, you'll see an edit button. And that edit button is important because that's where your advanced settings for your meetings are. What you want to do is to enable waiting room. Why do we want to enable waiting room? Is when you're next to I teach my students back to back. And so if I don't want to be interrupted, they have to be placed in a waiting room when they go online. and I just play a chime that tells me, okay, someone stepped into the waiting room or just went online and are waiting in the waiting room. And that you always have to have enabled. And also, it helps for security reason. It filters who comes in and out. And there's also another feature there on the top, password, required meeting password. Um, I nowadays I have a weekly passwords that I send to my students. I change them quite often, and so they know that if they're going to log in, they have to know what the weekly password is, and I change it often, and I'm like that. When I first used Facebook, I always check the security settings, and when everyone first used Facebook, of course, there's some security loopholes there, security glitches that people like normal people will not um, even know how to configure a toggle, and we all had a learning curve with that too. And so with Zoom, the same thing. You just have to think of it as your own house. If you want to lock your front door, you got to have a password, so that only people that have a key can go in. And if you have a studio, for example, in my home right now, I designated our guest bedroom as my studio teaching. If you have a student that came in 10 minutes earlier, they can wait in the living room or they can wait in the waiting room. And so that waiting room does that trick. Then you can click start, and then it starts your uh, your meeting, and then you will see this call using internet audio. And a lot of students make the mistake of pressing cancel. Even teachers make the mistake of pressing cancel. If you press cancel, you will be muted during the meeting, and no one can hear you. You won't be able to hear anyone, or your students won't be able to hear you. So you want to make sure call using internet audio. You click on that. Then those are the controls there. Sorry for the face there. I have to screenshot it to get that. Audio video control, there's a microphone there where you can mute your microphone, and that's useful because when I need to go use the washroom, I want to make sure that I mute my audio and unbroadcast my video. So you can broadcast or unbroadcast your video at will. And then there's that screen sharing, the share content button that I use for screen sharing, and the meeting room, waiting room, control center, I call it, which is labeled participant. There you'll see who's in your meeting and who's in your waiting room if your waiting room is enabled. Then there's three dots, very, very important three dots that you need to know is the settings area when you're already in the meeting. So we'll click on that, virtually click on that, and you'll go to meeting settings. Now, we want to make sure that in that meeting settings that you have two things, basic things enabled. Um, the play chime for enter and exit, that is so you know if someone went online, your next student is online. And it's also good for time management. When you hear that ding, 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 it means that another student is waiting and you won't go overtime for your next students. And that was my problem with one-on-one lessons. I always went overtime, sometimes even 15-minute overtime, half an hour overtime. So this kept me much more organized. And there's a button there again, put participants in waiting room on entry. You have to make sure that that's turned on. And then with the share screen content, there's that screen there right in the very top. That's when you want to share your screen. Now, word of caution, if you're sharing an iPad or a computer screen, make sure there's nothing there that you don't want your students to see, because they will see everything. They will see every single thing that you have on that computer. So I have dedicated my iPad Pro just for teaching. So everything that's on it is all for teaching, all their music, their apps. So just uh, use common sense on that one. Uh, Now, when you click on that, you'll see screen broadcast, Zoom. And sometimes it has an option for Facebook, for other things, YouTube. You just click on Zoom and start broadcast. And when you start broadcasting, it will count down from 3, 2, 1, and it will broadcast your screen, whatever it is. So that's for the mobile devices. Now I'll go through the command centers for the desktop. So when you download it for the desktop, you'll see this one. And on the far right corner, you'll see a tool icon there. That's your settings icon. And that setting icon is important because then you can go to this window that has general, video, audio, share screen, chat. Um, Most important to set up is your video. Now, when you have more than one video camera, so your laptop or your desktop will have its own built-in video camera. Now, if you hook up a video USB video camera like what I'm doing, I have a Zoom Q8, it will appear there. Now, yesterday when I did a webinar, people asked, so, but my computer doesn't recognize my webcam or this and that. If it can be hooked via USB to your computer, most likely you'll be able to use it. Now, you just have to go to the manufacturer's website and download the device drivers. That's an important hack as well. Download the device drivers so your computer can recognize the equipment, and when it does, it will appear on the selection on your camera, either built-in camera or your external camera. So in this case, I have my Q8 webcam. Then on the audio settings, you can also toggle between the microphones. So I have my Yeti microphone connected to the other USB port that my computer recognizes. Then Zoom will be able to recognize that as well. And then you can toggle between Yeti or Q8, it depends. And you can also do that while you're in the meeting. Another thing to remember for setting the audio for you and your students, you want your input volume to be at least 75% so that your students doesn't have to struggle to hear you. So what I did is I put my input volume at 75 and I lowered the gain on my uh, Yeti, and I just adjust it. If they're not hearing me well, I can increase the gain, but put the input volume at least 75%. Don't put it at 100 because then the sound would saturate. Speaker output volume, put it at 100 so you don't have to struggle to hear your students, especially if you're using earphones or using external speakers. That's a setting that you need to put at 100%. Now, another thing, to unclick, there's a box there that says automatically adjust microphone volume. You don't want that clicked because if you have that clicked, what it does is that when your students play fortissimo, it will cut it. Now, if they play too soft, it will make it loud. So it will flatten the sound. So you want that automatically adjust microphone volume to be unclicked, unselected, so that you'll hear the pianissimos, you'll hear the fortissimos, and it won't cut on you. Now, that's for teacher side. On the student side, it has to be the same. You want to make sure that they also have at least 75% input volume, their speakers at full blast, so that you'll hear exactly the same thing. Now, this is what I'm talking about. When you have this, you're already inside the meeting. If you go to the icon, mute icon on the lower left, you'll see that there's an arrow that you can toggle with, and that's the settings where you can change whatever microphone you want to use. You know, either the built-in microphone or the external microphones that you have. In this case, I have the Q8 webcam audio there, which I love the microphone of this for many reasons. And the Yeti is perfect for when I'm just talking. It's very crisp and very clear. Then there's the built-in input that's built in for the with the Mac, and also you can select the speakers there. You can either, like what Graham was saying earlier, you can either connect your earphones directly to your device. My Yeti has also an earphone monitor, so you can hear yourself talk. You can hear how you sound. You can hook it up there and then choose that as your speaker output. So that's where you'll find those settings. Right beside it is the video settings. So this is where if you need to go to the bathroom or or go out, step out for a room and for a second or grab a snack, mute or stop the video. Then walk out of the room and then grab whatever drinks or snack, and they won't hear you. Now, if you're snacking something and you're opening a package, mute your microphone so that your students doesn't hear that and they don't get distracted. That's also uh, so this is on the right side of it, the arrow. You can toggle between cameras that you have that's connected to your computer. And this one too that I have, you can stop video on that, and it stops video. And you can stop video on this one too, then it stops video. So you just have to uh, remember that you have different cameras that your students are looking into. So when you stop videos, you just remember how many devices you have your video on.
Hey Ross.
Yes.
So we have about 10 minutes
Yeah.
left, and there are some questions. I've been answering them as we go along, but one
Yeah.
of the questions is what software tools are available would you recommend for teaching theory, editing fingering, music? I think those are the two.
So I use Fourscore for let me. I use Fourscore to change fingerings and stuff, and because I can write things down there. Um, I just pull up a lot of the music from IMSLP and I write the fingerings myself. And my students usually take a screenshot of it or they copy it in their score. So that's what I use. And I also use Microsoft Whiteboard, as I showed earlier, for kids that are or parents that don't know how to transform pictures into PDFs. Uh, that actually I prefer this because they send a JPEG. It's very convenient for everyone, and they don't forget to send me a copy of what they're working on the day of or the night before the lesson, and we just I import it raw picture file and I write on it. And this ones you can share with them too, so they have a copy of what you guys are working on. I can put reminders there. It's almost like their notebook, and even better than a notebook in many sense, because they this for some reason sticks with them. When I write things on their notebook before, they just that notebook is in their bag. They don't even look at it. This one, oh, they're so attentive. And what I love about online, since I went fully online, was my students have been far more cleaner in their performances. Have been winning a lot more competitions because it's partly because online I'm far more detailed, and I have to be, and I have my ears are more open because I have to be because there's that technological gap there. We're waiting for 5G, right?
Okay, two more questions
Yes.
that have just popped up. Actually, a bunch of people in the chat, and the questions: where do you get that cool rainbow pen?
Oh, it's built into the Microsoft Whiteboard. It's built in. It's down here. If you look, see, I just popped it up. It's down there. That's a cool rainbow, and my students love that. Why I don't use the whiteboard that Zoom provided is that it's a bit finicky for me, and so I just use this. And also, but if you want something interactive where you write something and the students write something, then use the Zoom whiteboard because then they can write things on it. Here, it's one-sided. I'm the only one that can write things.
Right. Okay. There's this question has come up in all of our webinars so far. It hasn't been possible for me to play duet or three or more parts ensemble pieces with students. Is there a way to do that
I
at
pre-record.
Zoom?
I pre-record everything. So I pre-record. I send videos to my students of if when we have a duet, and they just play along with it.
Right.
And,
The sorry to interrupt, Ross. One of the challenges with Zoom or any video conferencing software is there's a latency or delay, and so when I'm talking with Ross and he's talking back, the delay is okay. But when you're trying to play in unison, if you're trying to say play a duet live, it's very challenging to do. Um, just because of the delay. So that's one way to get around it
yeah,
is doing the recording.
we have to accept the limitations of the technology and work around it, and not force it to do things that it won't be able to do, like perform in real time. So I just pre-record everything, and then they play it on another device, and then I can hear the feedback of it, so I know what's happening.
Okay, for games like Tenuto, do you have students share their screen?
I share my screen for the Tenuto, and then they just um, tell me the answer. and I input the answer on my end. Any more questions?
Okay, there was a question. Where do you purchase the Zoom Q8 webcam? So I'm actually going to provide a link for you. Um, on our webinar on Wednesday, our digital product manager, Jeremy Cook, what he's done is he's put together on our website a group of products they're calling Online Music Teaching Essentials. The Zoom Q8 is in there. And so
You're muted, Graham.
Sorry, we just lost the end of Graham's statement there, but we will post a link to the online teaching essentials in the Q&A as well in the chat box.
Okay, perfect. I had muted my microphone because, as I said earlier, my son's learning The Office. He's almost got it down now, so that's good over this this last 1 hour. Um, okay, and what about clapping and ear training? Still a lag issue.
Same thing. What? Okay, how you can work around this is always use a metronome on their end. All of my students have a separate device they use as metronome, and that's why I think my students are playing more cleaner because they're always using metronome, and because of that delay, sometimes there's that latency that goes faster and slower, faster and slower. You want to make sure that you're not blaming them for rushing, where in fact it's the internet connection that's doing that for them. So you ask them to always put a metronome so that you hear if they're really on time.
Right. Okay. Are you sharing Microsoft Whiteboard from your iPad Pro?
Yes.
Okay. And do you use a finger to write on the whiteboard?
No, I use my pen, but you can use a finger as well. And if you're using a desktop version of it, you can use your mouse.
Great. Okay, I've stopped sharing your video, Ross.
Perfect. Thank you.
So just if anybody can hear through my microphone, my son is now practicing his bass upstairs. So I'm not sure what we're learning. So excellent. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. We're just going to quickly go back to the PowerPoint presentation. I have a couple closing slides, and we've got 3 minutes left. We're so on time, Ross. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, 1 sec. Here we go. I think everybody can see the screen. Okay, so the first thing is all of the products we talked about today. There's a link I just posted in the chat. It's also will be in the slideshow. But if you go to the homepage of our website, tomlingmusic.ca, you'll see a button that says Online Teaching Essentials, and click in there, and there's a group of kind of, a good, better, best version of all of the categories. So USB microphones, dynamic microphones, tablets, headphones, those sorts of things, or tablet microphones. So depending what device you have, a lot of them are very inexpensive. I mean, there's a little Samsung direct mic for your iOS device. It's like $29. There's microphones around $50. So you don't have to spend a lot of money. But it will definitely make a big improvement in your sound. Okay, so that's the first thing. And we've already been answering questions. So this was the Q&A portion of but I think all of the questions are answered right now. And let's just see here. Okay, and last slide. Okay, so if you would like to download this and review it, the slides that Ross went over in his portion of the presentation, I'm going to merge into the webinar presentation, and then we'll upload that to a Dropbox link. So if you, depending where you are in Canada, you can go to any one of our sites, tomlingmusic.ca/educators, or Steinway Calgary, Ottawa Steinway, or Steinway Toronto. So we have landing pages now for educators, and we have added a bunch of content already, and we have a lot more to come. So our team across Canada is scouring the internet, looking for content that would be of value to teachers and students, and we will be adding those links to the educator section. As well, we are planning our own events for students and teachers. As an example, we are doing some online recitals. So we know that there's a lot of kids at home that are practicing and they don't have a place to play. There's no competitions or examinations or recitals happening. So we are starting to host online recitals, and we can show you how to do that. We'll probably have a webinar just dedicated to that to show you as a teacher if you want to have an online recital. Let's say if you've got
I just
20.
did that 2 weeks ago.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have 20, let's say you have a class of 20 students, you can have them all log into Zoom, mute all of them, have one student at a time perform for the other ones, unmute that student, and as you go around. So that's a fun thing to do. I know that the competitions, provincial, regional, and national competitions are all looking at how they can deliver, continue to go on in an online format. And also was some announcements from the Royal Conservatory of Music about their exams. So go to rcm.ca and you can find out a lot about that. So getting in touch, here's my email and the Tomlin Music website, and here's Ross's email and his, I think this is your main website. Is that right, Ross?
Yes.
Okay. And if you, I would recommend go online and you can connect with either one of us on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, etc. But Ross has a great Facebook page, and he's posted a whole bunch of contents and answered questions about his online setup there as well. So I think that is it. CJ, I'm for some reason unable to see the Q&A panel, so I see there's one red question left. So if you want to just copy it into the chat, I can see it, and if we can maybe answer that last one.
Yes. The answer should be yes on that one.
Yeah. Is it possible to use an iPhone as a separate camera? Yes. And maybe quickly, I'll just show this before we log off. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen, and I'll just show you what I've done on my side. Is I have another iPad and an iPhone. The iPad is actually signed into Zoom meeting using my son's account, and so I added him to the meeting. And so if I go under here and show non-video participants, you'll see my son here, and I can ask to start video, and I say okay. And so this is my organ keyboard setup here. So you can see the left side of my keyboard, and then I have somewhere is I do have an overhead cam, but I think probably my batteries died or something while we were going along here. But I have another camera that's logged in into the same account. So basically I have an iPhone, I have it on one of those selfie sticks, and I have it mounted to a camera mount, which maybe I'll just show a picture of it so you can see it. You can see there you go. You see the camera sticking over there. So basically it's a selfie stick on a camera tripod, and I opened up the app on my phone, the Zoom app, and I just typed in join meeting and used the same ID from this meeting. So I guess a Zoom hack that I'd never thought of is what Ross is doing, is having multiple accounts on multiple devices, which you could definitely do, but you can also just sign into the same account from multiple devices. You just have to, I think it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 digit number. That's your meeting code. And if you go join meeting, type in that code, your device will connect. And I tried this yesterday with 4 different devices. I had 2 computers, 2 phones, and an iPad, all connected under the same account. So you can definitely do that. Okay, so we are at 11:04. We started 5 minutes late, so we are right on time. I would like to say, first of all, to Ross, thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I learned a lot myself, and I'm sure everybody else did. So thank you. I look forward to connecting online. And to all the teachers that joined us today, we had, I think, about 300 people, which was fantastic. Thank you so much, and I wish all of you the best of success in these challenging times, and you know, hope this has helped you transition from face-to-face in-person studio teaching to online teaching. And please let us know if you have any questions at all.